I can't hear. If Blaine's talking, I can't hear him.
I cannot hear Blaine.
Oh, okay. I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah,
Great.
You're not louder for me yet. You're like the same level you've been. Maybe I'm deaf in my right ear.
My college roommate had.
My left is my better ear. Now I think about it. Yeah, I mean, I'm at max, for sure.
Yeah.
I turned it all the way to the, twisted all the way to the right. It's maxed.
Ken's just bringing the vibes.
Yeah, maybe my right ear is just worse.
Could be.
Lesson learned.
I was trying to think. We were talking earlier about names, make sure I was pronouncing like. I was trying to think real quick if there were any other one, but I don't think any more we're going to.
Welcome to the winningest championship weekend in AUDL history. Championship Weekend 11 here at the iconic Breese-Stevens Field in downtown Madison, Wisconsin. You see the Colorado Summit and Chicago Union warming up on your screen. Ian Toner thrilled to be joined by DC Breeze head coach Darryl Stanley, Indianapolis AlleyCats All-Star and league-leading goal scorer Cam Brock. Gentlemen, how does it feel to be here at Championship Weekend?
Oh, this is a welcoming town. The weather couldn't be any better. This is perfect.
It's great to be here. I get the pleasure of coming here a lot. I'm really excited for the atmosphere tonight. It's always amazing here, no matter who's coming into town.
So we got two blockbusters in front of us tonight. We got the Central Division champ, the Chicago Union, facing off against the West Division winners. That's the Colorado Summit. That's at 6 p.m. Eastern. On the other side of the bracket, a rematch of the 2021 title game, where the Flyers exercised a whole lot of demons in capturing their first championship. It's Carolina against New York. We got a packed show for you here on AUDL.TV, leading up to opening pull between Chicago and Colorado at 6 Eastern. Guys, anybody surprised to see these four teams here right now this weekend, given the body of work over the course of this 2022 season?
Well, I feel like both Cam and I could have a bone to pick with that. I mean, you know, if I didn't have a horse in this race, I could feel otherwise. But no, these teams have been dominant, to be fair. I mean, the Empire, at least in my division, I can't complain. I mean, that's a worthy team to represent the East.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. Like, we played Chicago close in one of our games, but I mean, they seem to be the class of the Central Division throughout most of the year, and I think we can say that for all four of these teams. I mean, they've been at the top of their division from day one, so not surprised at all to see them here.
So let's take you through how we got here, and we're going to start out west with the Colorado Summit. They came into 2022 as one of 3 expansion franchises new to the West Division. All they did was go 11-1 in the regular season. They beat Salt Lake for the 3rd time this year to capture the West Division championship. If they win it all this weekend, they'll be the 4th expansion franchise in league history to win a title in an inaugural season.
Man, it's what they've done out there has been really incredible. I think the thing that's been the coolest thing for me to see is how they went from being a team that turned the disc over pretty regularly early on, and throughout the season they have really tightened that up all the way to being one of the top 4 in the league in turnovers per game in terms of least amount. So that shows the improvement throughout the season. I'm excited to see if they continue that coming into this game, because they're going to need to if they're going to beat this Chicago team.
And the Summit are going to have its hands full with the Central Division champs, the Chicago Union. Chicago also went 11-1 and beat Minnesota for the 3rd time in 2022 to win a 2nd consecutive division title. On offense, you've got the league's all-time assist leader, Pavel Giannis, and on defense, you've got Team USA World Games champion Nate Goff patrolling the deep lanes.
I mean, I love this Chicago team. To me, I think there's just a blend. I mean, they can play anybody anywhere. We'll definitely be talking about where they're going to put Joe White. That'll be a very interesting thing. I mean, he's not played a lot of games for them this season. It's going to be really interesting. Probably on the D-line, but I'm excited to see that. That O-line, though, just immense. I love what Jeff Weiss is doing this year.
They have so many pieces, and it seems like they're also interchangeable. Like, everyone on the field is capable of making a huck at a very high percentage throw. Believe it or not, Pavel Giannis, of all people, actually has the worst huck percentage out of the guys on their O-line. And if that's something you're saying about your O-line, then I think you've got some pretty good shooters out there.
Absolutely.
Well, next up, it's the defending champs. Carolina, another team that went 11-1, earning the top spot in the South Division going into the playoffs. And then the Flyers avenged their only regular season loss against Austin in the South Division title game. Look, this could be the deepest group from top to bottom when we look at all 4 teams here. I don't know what more you can ask from this squad coming into this weekend.
I mean, I talked about how deep I thought that the Union were. Carolina, just up top and bottom. Their coaching system, their college team, and now their pro team, they're just bringing this talent. These people have been playing together 8 years, 10 years. That's not something you see every day, and I mean, that's a great reason why they were able to culminate as champions in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their roster, you could almost break their roster into 3 different groups, and they could be a starting unit for probably anyone in the league. I mean, it is insane the depth they have, but really their top-end talent is what's really going to have to shine tonight if they are going to beat the undefeated Empire.
The Flyers are looking to become the first franchise to repeat since Bo Kittredge and the San Jose Spiders did that back in 2014. And last but certainly not least, let's turn our attention to the New York Empire. Darryl Stanley and the DC Breeze, you guys pushed them to the limit last week in the East Division Championship game, but somehow another Jack Williams buzzer beater connected They kept that perfect season alive. If they're able to win 2 more games this weekend, that'll be the 4th perfect season in league history.
I mean, listen, they earned it. They went out and got some really talented players to come round out that team in 19 that was undefeated, that first Empire team that won the AUDL championship. Cam, you went against that juggernaut too. What do you think, and what are you seeing that's going to make this team maybe get over the hump for 2022?
You know, it's hard to really put your finger on it because they're bringing back a lot of the same pieces, but I think, like, looking at Ryan Osgar in particular, like, as good as he was last year, he really has just taken himself to a whole nother level this year. And one thing that you're always going to have to contend with 4 times a game is the way that they just dominate in the air at end-of-quarter situations. I think the end-of-quarter situations and how Carolina is able to handle those is going to play a big part in who ends up winning this game.
Well, co-owner Paul Stevens told Evan Lepler, we are chasing history, going after their 2nd title in 3 seasons. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether you're on AUDL.tv or Facebook or YouTube. We want to hear from you. We're going to have some questions and put our analysts here on the hot seat later in our pregame show and even in halftime as our coverage continues throughout this weekend. In order to get in on that conversation, use the hashtag AskTheAUDL, and we'll be able to pick some of those questions out and put these guys on the spot and see what they think. Plenty more to come here on our pregame show. When we come back, Cam and Darryl are going to get into some chalk talk. We'll break down the stars and strategies in the Colorado-Chicago face-off. Stay with us.
Welcome to AUDL Weekly. Time for another episode of the show, all about ultimate stories, perspectives, conversations, and more.
Welcome back to our championship weekend coverage, coming to you live from Breese Stevens Field in Madison, Wisconsin on AUDL.tv. Tonight's first semifinal features the Colorado Summit against the Chicago Union. And look, Cam's been racking his brain, thinking about all his games against Chicago this season and in the past. Darryl's been poring over film. I mean, all right, Cam, you've been watching a lot of film too. But time to start taking a closer look at some of the stars and strategies that are going to be deciding factors in this matchup. And let's start with Colorado. I mean, when we talk about this team, you can't avoid talking about the QB1, the former MVP, the former Flyer, Jonathan Nethercutt. He's just looked right at home here in the Rocky Mountain Air.
Yeah, I mean, Nethercutt's just a guy that you can't game plan for like you can game plan for other people. He throws discs to spaces on field that just other people can't, and especially at distances that other people can't do it. I think the big key here with Nethercutt is going to be, what do the turnover situation look like? If he's throwing end-of-quarter turnovers, you chalk that up, right? Like, you need somebody to throw that disc. But if he's got 2 or 3 kind of in the flow of the game turnovers, I think that's going to be a big problem. And he does have a tendency sometimes to take some shots that maybe he should holster. So I'm really looking to see him just be smart with the disc and just hit those easy break side throws, because everything on the break side is easy for that guy, for sure.
Well, I think what's going to be really fascinating is seeing the matchup against him. Tim Schock has the length, the physicality. You know, he's a strapping 205 pounds. Tim's huge, and I've coached Tim before. I think he's exactly the kind of player who can really challenge Nethercutt, especially for some of those resets that Jonathan likes to get. He'll squeeze into these really tight spaces. He'll get a 1-yard reset if he has to in a cloud of dust, or the teams will just throw it up to him sometimes, and he'll use his height to go get those resets. So I think Tim can provide that, a worthy adversary, and that length on the mark should be really critical. That'll be a matchup to watch.
Nobody's completed more hucks in the league than Jonathan Nethercutt this season in 2022. Defensively, the Summit have a lot of great athletes maturing through that Colorado collegiate pipeline. But one guy that stands out both with and without the disc is the Colorado State alum, Cody Spicer.
Cody Spicer is, if you're on offense, you're just hoping he's not lining up on you. I mean, he is so talented. He's so quick and agile for a guy of his size especially. You do not expect that explosiveness and quickness. I really think the matchup, in my opinion, would be on Jeff Weiss. I think that seems like an obvious one, matching his height, but also I think he can outspeed and outquick Jeff Weiss and really make him maybe a non-factor. I would hate to see him on someone like Ross Barker, who I think's shorter but also quicker in and out of his cuts. So.
I mean, that's fascinating to me. Like, as a coach, I'm probably not putting Spicer on a guy like Jeff Weiss. I feel like I've got other bigs for that. Maybe I put Joe White, who's similarly athletic and quick and a little bit taller. I think Spicer is just so agile. I'd love to see him on Ross. You told me Ross used to be a wide receiver?
Yeah, right here. He actually was a wide receiver on the Wisconsin football team, had a heart condition that, forced him to step away from football. But, I mean, you don't become a wide receiver at a Big Ten school, without being able to get in and out of some cuts, Well,
I feel like Cody's going to show us an ultimate athlete, especially at the professional level, can compete with that. Cody is one of the most agile, quick. He's just fluid. He floats on the ground. I mean, I'm really excited to see if he can keep up with the change of direction that you're telling us Ross Barker's got.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. It'll be fascinating to see who he's on. And if he is on Ross, I guess we'll find out who's right.
Now, for Chicago, Cam, I know you really want to see how this team handles its in-game adjustments. And Sarah Nolik joined Dave Woods' coaching staff this year, and he's credited her with a ton of the lifting and heavy work that she's done to level up its strategic approach.
Yeah, so last week it was just very noticeable that in the first half against Minnesota, they had tons of break opportunities, and they just had these in cuts open constantly from their D-line cutters, but they kept shooting it deep, and it was very confusing to me as I was watching. And then I noticed in the second half there was a very noticeable switch in their strategy when they were attacking the O-line, and they were grinding those unders, and they were playing more possession small ball, and they were much more successful. They went to halftime up 2 in that game. They easily could have been up 6 or 7 even with as many opportunities they've had. So I think they knew they had to make those adjustments, but it just wasn't communicated until halftime. And if you do that in a game tonight, it's too late.
I mean, I feel like it's the fact that they haven't really gotten that chemistry built up, right? Tim Schock hasn't played a lot with them.
Yeah.
Joe White has not played a lot with them. I think that's part of the challenge that you're seeing is these players are coming back in trying to establish these roles. They're not really ready, and I'm a little concerned that they had to get to an in-game adjustment to get those guys playing properly.
It's almost like you segued to this next strategic breakdown intentionally. I mean, we've been talking about Chicago's inability to have a complete roster all season long, and would that come back to bite them come playoff time? At the end of the day, they have some incredible X factors in their lineup, and we really want to zero in on Nate Goff, the Team USA World Games champion, and Joe White.
Those guys are matchup nightmares. I mean, they both are great with the disc in their hands. You don't want to push them downfield because they're going to outrun you. They're going to outjump you. These guys can do everything. And Nate Goff also is one of the best lockdown defenders that I've ever seen. Like, when he commits to playing defense on one person, he can just shut you down. But really what needs to happen is they really need to, I think, run their O-line attack through those two guys. And Nate Goff needs to make sure he doesn't get caught in the backfield, which he does sometimes. He needs to go upfield where he's way more dangerous and can affect the game way more. And I think if they run their attack through those two guys, they're going to have a lot of success getting breaks.
Nate Goff jumped over a guy.
One
Were
of
you
my
there?
I was not there, but they play that on the Jumbotron there and we go in. That guy did not come back to play Ultimate this year, and a lot of us wonder if that play maybe just ended his career.
I mean, yeah, a World Games player jumping over you, that's incredible. Nate Goff is an incredible athlete, versatile, can guard everything. I'm just really excited. And Joe White here, I mean, I remember him at the U24 tryouts in 2019. I could not tell between him and Eric Taylor who was the better thrower. The two of them, I mean,
that's a huge compliment.
They were incredible, just like hybrids, right? This is like the era of the hybrid, and I think that Joe White, typifies that better than anybody else. 6'4", fluid, can run anywhere, and has those kinds of throws too. Like that's pretty special.
It's hard to keep track of all the decisive takes that we're going to have to go revisit as this game goes on. Who does Cody Spicer match up on? Can Cody Spicer completely nullify Jeff Weiss? I don't know. We've had a lot of great takes from you guys, but it's time to get some other takes from our AUDL insiders. On the other side of the break, Adam Ruffner and Daniel Cohen join us for another section of Toss Up.
Welcome to AUDL Weekly. Time for another episode of the show, all about ultimate stories, perspectives, conversations, and more.
Well, you've heard them go at it all.
Past podcast, and now we're here at Championship Weekend with league analysts Adam Ruffner and Daniel Cohen. Pleasure to be joined by these guys. It's time for a lively Championship Weekend edition of Toss Up. Gentlemen, let's get right into it. First question we got for you. Which Colorado Mama Bird alum will post a better plus-minus tonight? Pavlianis of the Chicago Union or Quinn Finer of the Colorado Summit?
You know, I'm going to have to go with our MVP finalist Pavel here tonight. You know, if you've been here at Breese Stevens Field the past 2 days, you've probably seen Pavlianis. He's been all over this facility, practicing, talking with people, just kind of getting his fingers into the dirt. And I really like him just sort of possessing himself in this environment, getting ready for his second consecutive semifinal and to, I think, revenge last year's performance. You know, Pavel was spectacular last year in the semifinals and had just one mistake towards the end. I think he is dead set on rectifying that here tonight against the Colorado team who he knows a bunch of these kids. He's going to want to come out and perform against them.
He was +6 in last week's playoff win against Minnesota and, of course, became the league's all-time assist leader. Daniel, what's your take?
I'm going to agree with Adam here. I'm going to take Pavel over Quinn Finer. Like Adam said, last year's semifinal game, huge performance from Pavel, and I don't think that was any mistake. I think he knows that this offense is performing at its best when he has as many touches as possible, and while he has a great supporting cast around him, I still feel like he's going to be the guy to really take charge for the Union offense. Quinn Finer, on the other hand, I think Colorado's going to take a little bit more distributive of an approach with their touches, with their plus-minus. Harder to predict who's going to lead the team in scoring, but I feel pretty good about Pavel coming into this game.
We heard Jay Frood talk about how dynamic and versatile this Summit offense is in the press conferences this morning. Let's take a look at the defense now. Next question. Which defending duo will earn more blocks in the game? Nate Goff and Jace Bruner of the Chicago Union or Cody Spicer and Matthew Agee of the Colorado Summit?
I'm going to go with Goff and Bruner here. I think Colorado is going to be a little bit more aggressive taking those deep shots as they've loved to do this season. And I think the Chicago defenders are going to benefit a little bit more than that, more than the Colorado defenders. I think AJ and Spicer are obviously fantastic defenders, but Chicago also has the pieces to really avoid those top matchup defenders, whereas Bruner has shown great range as a poaching defender. Goff obviously has that 6'4" frame, and he's dominant in the deep space. So I think Bruner and Goff, based on the play styles a little bit, are going to have higher block totals this game.
Adam, what do you got?
I just think Colorado is going to come into this a little bit more prepared defensively. I really liked listening to head coach TK of the Summit talk about that overload capacity that they like to put on opposing offenses. And I think with playmakers like Spicy and Agee, it just sets them up for success. You know, Cody Spicer has been so terrific at starting off games strong. I expect him to get a block in the first 6 to 8 points tonight. I just think he's been that kind of tone setter for them, and I think he's going to respond with a big game tonight. I expect him to be all over those lanes for the Summit.
Another intriguing storyline here at Championship Weekend. A couple former Radicals in this matchup returning to Breese Stevens Field. Which former Radical will gather more total yards tonight? Ross Barker of the Chicago Union, Jay Frood of the Colorado Summit.
I've got to go with my man Jay Fruit on this. Ross Barker is having an incredible season this year. He's been the perfect Swiss Army knife for their roster in Chicago. He is connecting on more deep shots than ever. But I think after warming up, returning from an injury last weekend in the West Division finale, Jay Fruit is ready to unleash at full speed at championship weekend. And the last time he was here in 2018, he put on a show in the semifinals and championship game. So I'm just expecting a big return for Fruit here in Breese Stevens Field.
What do you got, Daniel?
I think I want to agree. I think I want to take Jay Fruit too. He's been to so many championship weekends, yet has never won a championship. This is his, sixth season getting to the big Final Four, and I just think he's due for a big game, and I think Colorado is going to have to lean on those vets, lean on the experience that they have in this environment. So I like Jay Fruit a lot. Of course, I love Ross Barker, but I think I want to give it to Fruit and the strength of the home crowd behind him.
After all the beef all season long, you guys just line up on the same page here
Not
at
the second
championship
one.
weekend. Of course.
One disagreement.
One last question we got for you. This one's could apply to both games, but obviously we're focusing on Chicago and Colorado. Is overtime going to be required to choose a victor tonight here in this first semifinal?
No.
Yeah, I would say no as well. Even though I
Yeah,
started
no?
with
Can
yes.
you go with yeah, no?
It's
Can
a
you
yeah, no.
elaborate?
It's a hesitant no.
Offense, no.
Yeah.
I just think whichever defense kind of starts to get its feet into the ground quicker is going to form a little bit of a gap here in the first semifinal. So I could see these teams trading out in the first three quarters, but I think down the stretch, one team might solidify itself and carry into some momentum into a championship tomorrow.
I think Chicago wins by a goal or two, honestly. I think they're better prepared for this game. I think they know this environment a lot better than Colorado. And I think Colorado might not be connecting on those deep shots as easily as they were in the West Division all season.
All right, well, you heard it here first. There's Daniel's pick. Make sure you at these guys on Twitter. Tell them how wrong they were for all of their opinions.
Please do.
And stick around, because coming back, we're going to have Cam and Darryl's picks. Opening poll just a few minutes away here at Breese Stevens Field.
Welcome to AUDL Weekly. Time for another episode of the show, all about ultimate stories, perspectives, conversations, and more.
Welcome back to Championship Weekend pregame coverage live at Breese Stevens Field. Earlier this morning, some of the coaches and players were kind enough to give us their time right here on this very set. We're going to start with Colorado head coach Tim Kafalis answering some questions in his own words.
Joined by Tim Kafalis, one of the co-head coaches of the Colorado Summit. Tim, thanks for being here. Congrats on making it to Championship Weekend. And I just was curious to start with, too. I mean, I've talked to you a little bit throughout the season about the culture of buy-in and commitment that you and your fellow coaches have built. I mean, we've seen expansion teams do that in year one. We've seen expansion teams struggle to do that in year one. Can you talk about the keys to building that culture of commitment and buy-in for this first-year expansion team to be good enough to get here to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it started with team construction and even like pre-player team construction. The owners were super thoughtful with like coach selection, like who's involved with the team from the ground level up. Joe Smash Anderson, even though he's also a team player and captain, he's been involved with like the crafting of this team since before I was on board. So putting a premium on folks that are really integral to the Colorado Ultimate scene, really emphasizing culture at every step of the way, like thinking about motivations for people and people being involved and why that is. And then just reinforcing that, right? You can say all you want at the beginning, but if you don't reinforce it as you go throughout your practices, your tryouts, your games and everything, if you don't keep that centered, it can drift away pretty quick. So we're pretty happy with how it's manifested, and it's really an honor to be here this weekend, and it's kind of a testament to all the cultural work that folks have put in since December.
TK, whether you've been nice enough to give me a few minutes before a Summit broadcast or answering some of Evan's questions for the Tuesday toss, you've talked a lot about how you like to have your defense increase the cognitive load on the imposing offense, and how you believe that accumulates as you get later into the game. Can you talk about specific ways in which your defense does that, and how you kind of get your unit to manifest that on the field?
Well, I mean, it all comes down to whether or not we're executing what we're trying to do. So that's step one, if we can execute. But I mean, the core idea is to work against the other team's flow, which we can't always do because offensive players in this league and others are amazing. So thinking about how they want to attack in sequence, what the patterns are, and then how you can disrupt them. Really good players are going to recognize the disruption and play through it. Really good players, even at the highest levels, as fatigue wears on, as a lot of dynamics change throughout the course of a game, can have slip-ups. And I think our overall philosophy is if we can make every look, every throw at least a slight higher degree of difficulty harder, we give our D more chances to get blocks. We make it a little bit more challenging for the other team to have easy completions. Our goal is just make them work, whether that's physically or really processing the field in front of them.
So you talked about culture, and just kind of recapping, the season has been pretty awesome, I think, for an expansion team to be here and to be in this moment. How has your team dealt with the limited amount of adversity that it's faced? 18-18 against Salt Lake. How are you setting them up culturally to deal with adversity potentially for this championship weekend?
That's a great question. I think early in the season, when we were still kind of finding our feet and figuring out the league, some of the rule changes and all of that, we learned a lot in those first 2 or 3 games about the pacing, and we faced a little bit of adversity then, and then kind of hit our stride, and we're cruising a bit more. A couple of bumps, lost to San Diego, but I think the key is that we believe it's easy to maintain culture when you're winning, right? That's the reality. If you're doing well, it's hey, we're all supporting each other, but you're winning, so that's a piece of cake. But I'm really confident in the group that we have, that whether or not we're winning, whether or not we're up or down, that folks are going to support each other, that folks are going to represent Colorado, that we're not going to be a team that if we face some adversity, if we go on runs of playing poorly or getting broken or not being able to put defensive pressure on, that we will respond in positive ways. And even last week against Salt Lake, it's a pretty back and forth game, but when Salt Lake's going on their runs, the team responded in the ways that we needed to. So confident that whether or not we're cruising or whether or not we're being cruised on, might be a word, that we can respond in positive ways.
That was Colorado head coach Tim Kafalis. Gentlemen, what stuck out to you from his remarks? Darryl, you first.
Well, I mean, culture was a huge thing. I mean, I think a lot of teams, especially when they start off their franchise, are looking for the best talent possible. It really impressed me to hear a rookie professional coach, even with that pressure, that's now on you trying to win those games, that they're willing to go out there and say, no, I'm going to go get high culture guys. Matty Jackson stands out to me. I mean, I literally called him the glue of Colorado Ultimate just the other day to his face. And he just touched this trophy. I mean, this guy knows what it takes to win here. He's been here. He's done that. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, setting a culture in the first year is just so important. I remember back in the first year of Cats and what we were trying to accomplish, and I don't think the culture quite got necessarily to where we wanted to be. So then we had to work over time to try to get to a place where we have the culture we wanted. For them to be able to come in the first year and be able to get guys, I think Joe Smash Anderson was probably, as he was mentioned, critical to that. Doing that in year one is really impressive, and it shows in the success they had and the way that they just improved so much throughout the season.
You can't just plop all these talented pieces on the field and expect them to take care of business magically. Next up, Chicago Union head coach Dave Woods.
Championship weekend. We got press conferences with one coach and 2 players from each team coming up over the next hour plus, and we begin with Chicago head coach Dave Woods. Dave, thanks for being here. Let's just start simple. How does it feel to be back at championship weekend for the 2nd straight year with the Chicago Union?
It feels great. It's quite an accomplishment any time, any year, any team that makes it this far through a grueling regular season to go through the divisional championship, the playoffs, and then the championship. It's great to be back at championship weekend. The team this year put in a lot of work in Chicago, and we are so glad that we earned the opportunity to be back here representing Chicago.
So the main thing I was curious to ask you about was how this team built its chemistry, because you weren't really a complete unit until the end of the season. How would you say you guys progressed and grew as the regular season went on, knowing that you were missing pieces? I mean, every team missing pieces throughout some point during the season, but you guys really became kind of the fullest form of yourself late in the year and in the playoffs.
Yeah, let's talk about that, Evan. I think it might have been you that kind of discredited us early on this year by saying things like, we don't have a complete team. We're losing so many key pieces. What is Chicago going to do? I think that we were a very complete team last year. I think that we could have used some adjustments last season. We didn't lose all that much. We retained a lot of our core players that you see this year. So we started out in a really good place this season, and then it was just fitting in some of the new pieces and figuring out where all of those pieces fit in as best as they could. So, I mean, we have a very long season, as everyone is aware. So the camaraderie, the team development, all of those things, they just happen week to week. And I'm glad to say that after a long, long season of games, meetings, hangouts, etc., our guys are finally peaking at the right time, which is supposed to be every team's goal. And so we are very fortunate that we have finally figured out how to put all of those pieces together and get everybody clicking at the right time.
You can always count on Dave Woods to be styling with the hair, the aviators. He's got it all going on. Cam, what was your biggest takeaway from his comments?
You know, I know from talking to Dave earlier this year even and talking to other players on the team, just like having the experience they did last year of going to championship weekend and being able to come here and for it not to be all new, I think that's going to be really big for them, because for the Summit, for pretty much everyone on that roster, it is all new. And having that experience, being able to fall back on not only the experience, but the fact that they pushed the champions to an overtime game, I think that can help have them up. They're going to have a lot of confidence coming in tonight.
Absolutely.
So we got 8 minutes until opening pull between Colorado and Chicago. Time to turn our attention to the players to watch for this one. No surprise, starting with Colorado. We got to keep our eye on John Nethercutt.
Wow. I mean, he's going to hug it. We know this. Can he get open? Can he keep the turns down? Big questions to ask. I love Tim Schock. I think Tim Schock's going to have a lot of success. I'm going to call it now. He's going to get 2 blocks on him.
Wow. 2 blocks from Tim Schock.
Yeah.
Cam, what do you got?
Sorry, I'm in shock trying to recover from that comment right there. Like, you know what? One of Nethercutt's like most iconic throws he had in the AUDL was on this field. He threw a full 80-yard huck end zone to end zone. I believe it was to Terrence Mitchell in a crossover game back in I think it was in 2018, the year that Madison won the title. So he's been on this field before. He has shown here, just like he did in Colorado in the thin air, he can put it full field when he wants to. I am excited to see not only the shots he takes, but also the shots he doesn't take, when he's willing to look something off and when he's willing to hit the break side instead of just shooting it deep.
Chicago has its own QB1, the league's all-time assist leader after his assists in the playoff victory against Minnesota last weekend, Pavel Giannis.
So what I'm interested to see here, Pavel, I mean, there are moments where he just carries the team. He'll make all the throws. He's a center handler. He's making the big breaks. He's making the hucks when he's in rhythm. But honestly, I noticed in these big games, he tends to maybe get a little bit safe, maybe kind of let the other hybrids do their thing. There's a lot of people who need the disc on that O-line. I'm a little worried. I'm not really sure that Pavel, which version of him we're going to get tonight.
Yeah, I think the other thing you have to keep in mind is he has the best supporting crew in the backfield he's ever had. We literally used to play as a defense, Pavel and not Pavel. It was do anything you can to get the disc into the other handler's hands. I think that's not necessarily a winning strategy anymore.
6 minutes from the opening pull between Colorado and Chicago. Keep it right here on AUDL.TV for live coverage. For Cam Brock, Darryl Stanley, Ian Toner, Evan Lepler, and crew will have you the rest of the way.
welcome to AUDL Weekly. Time for another episode of the show, all about ultimate stories, perspectives, conversations, and more.